Before the thumbnails. Before the like and subscribe. Before the intro songs that got seared into a generation's memory. There was just Roblox. It was 2006 when David Baszucki and Eric Castle quietly launched a platform that looked, to most adults, like a pile of colorful digital Lego bricks. But to the kids who discovered it, it was something else entirely. It was a universe. A blank canvas painted in studs and plastic colors, where you could be anyone, build anything, and go anywhere that somebody else's imagination had already mapped out. The servers were small, the graphics were blocky, and the character physics made everyone walk like they just got off a trampoline. And somehow, none of that mattered at all. From about 2007 to 2011, Roblox existed in a kind of golden silence. Its community was tight-knit, nerdy, creative. The builders were the celebrities. Names like Stickmaster Lake, the developer of Natural Disaster Survival, perhaps the most played Roblox game of all time, were spoken with the kind of reverence other kids reserve for rock stars. Games like Work at a Pizza Place, Sword Fight on the Heights, and the original Crossroads weren't just games. They were gathering places. A kid from Ohio and a kid from Singapore could wander into the same server and spend an afternoon doing absolutely nothing of consequence and feel completely fulfilled. But the silence was about to break, because somewhere around 2012, a new kind of person was discovering Roblox, one who brought a camera. Chapter 1. The first creators, 2012 to 2014. The earliest Roblox YouTubers weren't influencers. They weren't brand deals wrapped in human skin. They were just kids, slightly older kids, sometimes teenagers, who had figured out how to record their screen and who wanted to show the world something they loved. There was no playbook. There was no Roblox creator program or sponsorship pipeline. There was a game, a microphone of varying quality, and an enormous amount of enthusiasm. The early videos were raw. Commentary was unscripted. Editing was minimal, sometimes non-existent. A creator would load up Natural Disaster Survival, spend 10 minutes screaming as a tsunami rolled over their blocky character, and then upload it to YouTube with a thumbnail that was just a screenshot slapped with Comic Sans text. And people watched. They watched, and they subscribed, and they came back the next day. These videos did something crucial. They introduced Roblox to kids who had never heard of it. A child watching YouTube in 2013 might stumble onto a Roblox video through the autoplay algorithm and suddenly find themselves staring at this strange, limitless world of plastic people and infinite possibility. 30 seconds later, they'd open a browser tab. 30 minutes after that, they'd have an account, and Roblox's numbers would tick upward by one more. The platform began to understand that these creators were, without a single dollar of marketing spend, doing something no advertisement could replicate. They were making Roblox look fun, not in a scripted, polished way, but in the uncontrollable, chaotic, laugh-until-you-can't-breathe way that only genuine enjoyment produces. Roblox quietly took note. By 2014, there was a small but growing ecosystem of Roblox content on YouTube. Numbers were in the tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands for the biggest names. But the explosion was coming, and it would have a face, actually several faces, that an entire generation would never forget. Chapter 2. The Rise of the Pals, 2015 to 2016. If the YouTube era of Roblox has a golden age, it lives somewhere in the years between 2015 and 2017. And if that golden age has a face, or rather, 5 faces, they belong to a group of creators that millions of kids would come and know simply as the Pals. Dennis Coppoden, Alex, Sub, Coral, Poke. Say those names to anyone who was between the ages of 7 and 12 in 2016 and watch their eyes light up with recognition. These were the creators who defined what watching Roblox meant for an entire generation. Dennis Daly, Dennis, was perhaps the most recognizable. Canadian, cheerful, and possessed of an energy that seemed physically impossible to sustain across an hour-long video every single day. Dennis built one of the largest Roblox channels on YouTube through sheer consistency and a personality that felt genuinely warm. His thumbnails, bright, expressive, almost always featuring his wide-eyed Roblox avatar, became as iconic as any media image from the era. Kids didn't just watch Dennis play Roblox. They trusted Dennis. He was the older sibling figure who showed them how to play, what games to try, where the fun was hiding. Alex brought chaos energy, the friend who would do the thing nobody else dared to do in a game, just to see what happened. Sub was the voice of gentle reason. Coral had a comedic timing that felt effortless. Poke was the wild card, unpredictable, hilarious, the one who could derail an entire video with a single decision. Together, they played games with names that would become legend. Murder Mystery 2, the game where one player is secretly the murderer and another the sheriff, and everyone else is just trying to survive and point fingers. Natural Disaster Survival, where the map tries to kill you in 17 different creative ways. Work at a pizza place, which somehow remained relevant for nearly a decade. Obbies, obstacle courses, of every conceivable theme and difficulty. Tycoons, where you build an empire from scratch. Escape the ___ games, which required exactly as much strategy as their title suggested, and not a single bit more. The group videos were appointment television. Kids would come home from school, finish homework in the fastest, least thorough way their conscience would allow, and load YouTube on whatever device was available, laptop, tablet, parents' phone, to find out what the pals were doing today. There was something almost theatrical about the group dynamic, a cast of characters, each playing a role in an ongoing story that never really had a beginning or an end. It just was, and it was wonderful. The comment sections of these videos were their own communities. Kids organized, argued about who the best pal was, shared their own Roblox usernames, and formed friendships through the shared language of the content. A child in rural Australia and a child in suburban Canada, who would never meet and had nothing obvious in common, could bond over a mutual appreciation of Dennis's reaction when he got murdered in round 1 of Murder Mystery 2. Roblox, watching all of this, began to formalize its relationship with creators. The Star Creator Program, which would eventually give selected YouTubers a share of revenue from players who use their merch store, was still in the future, but the platform was already learning that its YouTube ecosystem was not a side effect of its success. It was the success. Chapter 3. The Games That Built a Generation, 2015 to 2018. The YouTube era didn't just celebrate Roblox games. It made them. A YouTuber uploading a video about a new game was, in the pre-algorithm age, the most powerful marketing tool a Roblox developer could dream of. You could spend months building the most perfectly crafted experience on the platform and reach a few thousand players through organic search. Or you could get Dennis to play your game for 15 minutes and wake up the next morning to a server that had crashed from demand. This created a feedback loop that shaped what kinds of games got made and what kinds of games got played. And the games that thrived in the YouTube era have a flavor you can still taste. Jailbreak arrived in 2017 and immediately became a landmark. Created by Batimo, developers Asimo 3089 and Back, it was a cops and robbers open world with a level of polish that made people stop and reconsider what Roblox was capable of. You could rob banks, evade police, drive cars across a genuinely large map, and do it all with a smoothness that felt, at the time, almost miraculous for a platform where the animation quality was previously described generously as functional. Jailbreak wasn't just a popular game. It was proof of concept. It told developers, players, and investors that Roblox was a serious platform for serious creativity. YouTubers loved it because it was endlessly replayable, endlessly dramatic, and every session generated content that felt unique. Murder Mystery 2, created by Nikki Elise, deserves its own paragraph, possibly its own chapter, arguably its own library wing. The premise was simple: one murderer, one sheriff with a gun, and a lobby full of innocents trying to figure out who's who before the murderer eliminated everyone. The social deduction element made it perfect for group videos. Watching 5 people try to accuse each other while the actual murderer casually walked past them all was comedy gold, and the YouTube era squeezed every drop of it. Adopt Me began as a modest roleplay game in 2017, but it was the 2019 edition of Pets, tradable, breedable, collectible creatures of varying rarity, that transformed it into something that defied categorization. It was simultaneously a social space, a trading economy, a collecting game, and the source of more childhood drama than any other Roblox experience by a significant margin. The scams, the trades, the heartbreak of being given a dud pet in exchange for your favorite. Every piece of it was documented, debated, and dramatized by a YouTube ecosystem that had found an endless content engine. Royale High built a fantasy world of tiaras and ball gowns and gave players, particularly young girls who felt underserved by Roblox's traditionally action-heavy content landscape, a place that was explicitly designed for them. It became one of the most visited games on the platform and spawned a passionate community of players who traded diamonds, collected seasonal items, and attended in-game balls with the seriousness of actual social events. YouTubers who covered it found audiences that were intensely loyal and deeply invested in every update. And then there were the egg hunts, the annual Roblox Easter events that became their own tradition, their own mythology. Every year, Roblox would hide eggs across dozens of different games, each egg requiring a different task to unlock. The community would mobilize in a collective puzzle-solving effort. YouTubers would race to document every location, and the eggs themselves became status symbols, proof that you had been there, that you had played and found and earned. The 2018 Ready Player One collaboration brought Hollywood to Roblox in a way that felt genuinely significant. Items from the film could be found in the Roblox world. The partnership signaled that the platform wasn't being tolerated by mainstream culture. It was being pursued by it. Chapter 4. The Mythology, John Doe, Guest 666, and the Shadows of the Platform, 2015 to 2018. No telling of the YouTube era is complete without its ghost stories. Roblox, like any space that exists at the intersection of millions of young imaginations, accumulated myths, urban legends, creepypastas, stories that spread from one kid to another in the way that ghost stories always spread. Half-believed, fully terrifying, impossible to disprove. John Doe and Jane Doe were, in reality, simply test accounts created by Roblox's developers in the earliest days of the platform. Their usernames were placeholders, their avatars the default gray and teal combination that had become synonymous with Roblox's oldest, most untouched accounts. But the internet decided they were something more. The myth went like this. Every year on March 18th, John Doe would come online. And when John Doe came online, he would hunt. He would seek out accounts, hack them, destroy them. The fact that March 18th had no particular significance to anyone at Roblox, and the fact that the accounts were demonstrably inactive test accounts with no capacity to do anything sinister, did very little to dampen the terror. Every year, as March approached, a wave of panic would ripple through the younger end of the Roblox community. Kids would avoid logging in. They would warn their friends. They would watch, with genuine anxiety, for signs that John Doe was active. YouTubers, being storytellers at heart, understood that this myth was more valuable as legend than as fact. Videos titled, John Doe IS Online, He Hacked Me, and I Met John Doe at Midnight, accumulated millions of views because they told children exactly what they already believed and wanted to hear confirmed. The fear was real, even if the threat wasn't. Guest 666 was a variation on this theme. The normal Roblox guest account, those friendly, anonymous players who showed up with names like Guest 1234 before the system was removed in 2017, corrupted into something darker. Videos depicted Guest 666 as a demonic entity that could appear in your server uninvited, follow you through the map, and, in some tellings, reach through the screen itself. The production values on these videos varied from clearly a friend in a costume to surprisingly effective horror editing. It didn't matter. They spread. The hacker myth was the broadest legend of all. It held that Roblox was perpetually under siege by hackers who could steal your account, corrupt your game, or appear as towering, distorted figures in your server with usernames made of symbols and empty space. Some of this was true in fragments. Account hacking was, and remains, a real issue on any online platform. But the myth grew far beyond the reality, becoming a free-floating anxiety that lived in the background of every session. What's remarkable about this mythology, in retrospect, is how communal it was. These were shared fears, shared stories, shared rituals of terror and reassurance. Roblox's myth ecosystem was the digital equivalent of telling ghost stories around a campfire, and the YouTube era amplified it to a scale that no campfire could reach. Chapter 5. Flamingo and the Chaos Era, 2017 to 2020. If the Pals represented Roblox YouTube's earnest, sunshine bright golden age, then Flamingo, the channel run by Albert Aritz, represented something different, something stranger, something that suited the platform's growing complexity. Albert had been creating Roblox content under another channel name, Albert Stuff, before launching Flamingo in 2017. His humor was dry, absurdist, and frequently aimed directly at the surreal edges of what Roblox's moderation could and couldn't catch. He didn't play games to win or to demonstrate skill. He played games to probe them, to find the fault lines, to discover what happened when you pushed the mechanics in directions the developers hadn't anticipated. His videos were experiments. What happens when you spend an entire session in a role-playing game, pretending to be an extremely unsettling character? What happens when you bring chaos to a game designed for order? What happens when you apply the logic of one game to the rules of another? The answers were always unpredictable, and the unpredictability was the point. Flamingo's audience was slightly older, or at least found humor in things that didn't fit neatly into the family-friendly category that defined most Roblox content. But the channel's appeal was genuine, and its numbers were enormous. Flamingo reached tens of millions of subscribers by leaning into the idea that Roblox, for all its colorful plasticity, was secretly a very strange place, and that the strangeness was worth exploring with full commitment. The character Albert played on camera, cheerful on the surface, chaotic underneath, became a kind of persona that fans adored and mimicked. His openings, his catchphrases, his reactions to the unexpected became memes in their own right, traveling across platforms and appearing in places far removed from Roblox itself. Flamingo also demonstrated something that Roblox YouTube's early era hadn't fully explored, the platform as a space for social observation. Albert's videos often ended up being, accidentally or intentionally, portraits of how people behaved in online spaces when they thought nobody was watching, or when the rules were suspended, or when a stranger showed up and did something completely unexpected. There was genuine sociological content buried inside the absurdist comedy, and the most attentive viewers felt it. Chapter 6, Creecroft and the Fan Theories, 2018 to 2020. While Albert was deconstructing Roblox from the inside, Creecroft, Forrest, was building something different, a channel defined by genuine enthusiasm and community warmth. Creecroft became closely associated with Piggy, a horror survival game that arrived in early 2020 and immediately became one of the most played experiences on the platform. Piggy blended escape room mechanics with a narrative mystery and an aesthetic that borrowed from Peppa Pig in ways that were deliberate, unsettling, and genius. The game released chapters in a serialise format, and Creecroft documented every one. Not just the gameplay, but the theories. What did this mean? Who was this character? Where did the story go? The theory crafting dimension of Creecroft's content tapped into something powerful. Roblox's community had always been story-hungry, and when a game gave them a narrative to chew on, they did so with extraordinary dedication. Creecroft's comment sections became collaborative writing rooms, filled with kids who had constructed elaborate timelines and character backstories and predictions that were sometimes more sophisticated than what the game itself delivered. Creecroft also embodied a warmth that felt different from the chaos energy of some peers. He was visibly delighted by the platform in a way that read as sincere, and his fan base, huge, dedicated, fiercely protective, responded to that sincerity with their own. Chapter 7, The Culture, Bacon Hairs, Noobs, and the Online Daters, 2015 to 2019. Parallel to the big-name creators, the YouTube era generated a social culture inside Roblox that was its own kind of story. The bacon hair, named for the default Roblox hairstyle that resembled, with some imagination, strips of bacon, became the symbol of the new player, the uninitiated, the one who hadn't yet spent Robux to customize their avatar. Calling someone a bacon was an insult in some circles, a badge of honor in others, and a genuine social category in all of them. Entire videos were dedicated to the social dynamics of bacon hair players versus customized players, to whether the discrimination was real, to stories of back-haired underdogs who turn out to be incredible players. The noob had a specific meaning in Roblox culture that differed from broader gaming usage. A noob wasn't necessarily bad at games. They were new, inexperienced, characterized by their default appearance, and their tendency to ask questions that any veteran would find obvious. YouTubers made endless content about encountering noobs, becoming noobs, defending noobs. The conversation was, underneath the surface, about belonging, about who counted as a real Roblox player and who was still earning that status. The online dater, the ODer, occupied the darker end of the cultural taxonomy. Roblox, being a social platform with a predominantly young user base, inevitably attracted people who used it for romantic roleplay of various degrees of appropriateness. The YouTube era generated significant content about exposing, mocking, and avoiding ODers, and while much of it was good-natured surveillance of a genuinely concerning phenomenon, it also created a culture of paranoia where simply standing near another player in a game could earn you an accusation. These social hierarchies, absurd on the surface, were completely real to the kids who lived inside them. They had their own logic, their own consequences, their own mechanisms for enforcing membership and defining exclusion. They were, in short, a society, a small, pixelated, profoundly earnest society, documented frame by frame on YouTube for posterity. Chapter 8, The Transition, Growing Pains, 2019 to 2021. Nothing stays golden forever. By the late 2010s, the Roblox YouTube ecosystem was beginning to shift. Some of the original creators who had defined the era were evolving their content, moving toward games that had nothing to do with Roblox. Some were experiencing burnout. The cost of daily uploads across years is not small, and the visible toll on creators who were still teenagers when they started was real and occasionally painful to watch. Some had built audiences large enough that Roblox was just one chapter in a longer story. The platform itself was changing. Roblox was no longer a scrappy kids game tolerated on the edge of mainstream culture. It was a company with investors and ambitions that extended far beyond what any of its early community had imagined. The IPO was coming. The metaverse conversation was heating up. Executives were making presentations to people in suits. The gap between the platform that children loved and the corporation that owned it was widening, and the community was growing up. The children who had watched Dennis in 2015 and 2016 were teenagers by 2020. Some of them were making their own content. Some of them had graduated from Roblox entirely, carrying with them only the nostalgia. The incoming wave of new players, younger, differently socialized, shaped by TikTok rather than YouTube, had their own relationship with the platform, one that didn't have the same reverence for the Golden Age creators. The pandemic year of 2020 caused a surge that complicated all of this. Roblox's user numbers spiked as millions of children, suddenly homebound and in need of social connection, found their way to a platform that was both a game and a meeting place. Adopt Me became, briefly, the most played game on the entire internet. Piggy arrived and consumed everything. New creators emerged who would define whatever came next. But the era, the specific, identifiable cultural phenomenon of Roblox YouTube as it existed from roughly 2014 to 2019, was completing itself.